So after Ganga left, Shantanu was all alone, and he felt sad. And I mean, he didn't have any kids either. I mean, his son was far away, and still he would go all the time to the Ganga, hoping that she would come out. 'Cause that was her, that's her form, is the river. So he would go to the river. So one time, again, he was hunting. It's the Kshatriya way. He was hunting, chasing down the deer, and he gets to the river, and that part of India, the river can get as wide as a mile. It's a big river. It's at least a couple 100 yards across. It's a big river. He gets there and it's completely dry. He's like, what? What happened? I mean, there's a lot of what? There's a lot of implications in that, especially for the leader of society. I mean, the king's job is twofold: to provide shelter and housing for the people, and to give employment for the people. That's the king's job. He's given domain over all the land of the kingdom. It's all his property. But he's supposed to give shelter and facility for living for all people. And he's supposed to give them employment. And that's his job. So, you can imagine the implications of the Ganga River, which is like this great, water source. All of a sudden it's dry. So he was surprised, and he's tried to follow the source. Why is it dry? And he comes across this youth, and he's shooting arrows into the river. And he's shooting so many that he made a dam in the river, and it stopped the water from flowing. So Shantanu looked at him. He's amazed. That's quite some skill. So then the boy saw him, and he disappeared in thin air. So Shantanu was like startled again. And then, the river force, it pushed the dam down, and then it started to flow again. And then Ganga appeared out of the river with the boy that was shooting the arrows, and she said, "This is your son. His name's Devavrata. So he can stay with you now. He's had his education." So Devavrata was there with Shantanu, and he was so happy. He's a half god. I mean, he's a half celestial. Devavrata. He was handsome and strong, and had all these mystical, energy, and he could use all. He's trained by Parashuram, who's the martial incarnation of. He's one of the Das Avatar. He's a Saktiavesh, which means he's empowered. There's a whole story about how he, in the Brahmanda Purana, there's a 26-chapter story of Parshuram, which is very long. I mean, usually, like in Bhagavatam, there's maybe 2-3 chapters. In the Brahmanda Purana, they have a 26-chapter story of Parashuram. So it goes into all the details of his life and all the story and how he got it's actually Krishna himself that empowered Parashuram. It's not like, even though, Vishnu, Krishna, but Krishna himself came. He got a special Krishna mantra. And then he said that, and then Krishna came and he gave him the power. And that's how he was empowered. And so so Parshuram's such a great personality. He's the one who taught Bhishma weapons. And so Shantanu was so happy to have, Devavrata. And they were always happy. They would go and do Kshatriya things together, go hunting and different things. And one time, Shantanu came back. Because before he was so sad, and getting his son back, he was so happy. So then one time he came back from his going out and surveying the kingdom. That's his job. he was really sad and downcast. And Devarata, he came to Shantanu. He said, "What's the matter, father?" And his father just kind of stared off into space. And then he looked at him and he said, "Sometimes," what he said was, he said, "Even though I have a son that's worth 1,000 sons, it says in the scripture to have one son is like having no sons, because son can be lost. And so sometimes I wish I had more children." And then he kind of went off. And Devarata was thinking over what this cryptic message was. And so finally, he asked the chariot driver, what happened out there? Why is he so sad? And the chariot driver explained that they were traveling near the Yamuna, and they came across this beautiful aroma that smelled like beautiful flowers, like the mogra. It's a special kind of jasmine. They imported it to Italy. They call it the Duke of Tuscany, but it's a really very powerful smelling kind of jasmine. It grows a little different than jasmine, but it's beautiful, and it's just like intoxicating aroma. And they followed the smell, like what's the cause of this? And there was a beautiful young maiden that was sitting on a boat, and she was the one who was generating this smell. And so, Shantanu gets on the boat, and he says, "What are you doing on the boat?" What? She said, "I'm the daughter of the king of the fishermen. There's a Nishada tribe. It's a caste of people. They were called fish eaters, or Nishada." And so she said, "My father wants to develop pious merit, so I paddle travelers across the river." So Shantanu said, "Oh, I need to go." So he got on the boat, and he said, "I need to go over here." So they went across the river, and he said, "No, actually, I need to go over here." So then they went somewhere else. And the whole time he's, staring at her. And he's like, "Are you married?" And she says, "No." He said, "I will be your husband." He said, "I'm King Shantanu of the Bharatas, king of this whole realm." And she said, "I cannot." She said, "I'm not my own master. You must talk to my father." So her name was Satyavati. She actually is the mother of Vyasa. There's a whole story with that. She was the mother of Vyasadeva. So Shantanu, he went to her father and he said, "I wish to marry your daughter." And the father was like, "I'm very honored to have such a great king come to me for the hand of my daughter. He said, but everyone knows of your son, Devarata, who's so powerful. And if I was to have my daughter marry you, everyone knows that you will give the kingdom to your son. So why would I have my daughter marry you and all her children will be substandard? I cannot allow this to happen." So Shantanu, he said, the father said, "Unless you renounce your son as being the heir, you cannot marry my daughter." So Shantanu would never do that. Because it's unjust also. I mean, it's his oldest son, and only for some attractive girl he wouldn't do. So that's why he felt, because he really was attracted to her though. And he wanted more children. It's kind of a tricky place to be. You know, you want to have more children, but you have this son that's worth 1,000. So he was in a tough spot. You can't just for the sake of some lust, But Devavrata, he wanted to serve his father. That was his motivation. And Shantanu wanted the best for his son, but Devavrata wanted the best for his father, and he was willing to renounce the kingdom if it would please his father. So he went to the king of the Nishadas very humbly, and he said, "What do I need to do to make it so that your daughter can marry my father?" So the man said, "You're the heir apparent, and my daughter's children will not be anything. So this cannot be. You must not be the king." So Devavrata said, "Fine, I will not be king. All your daughter's descendants shall will carry the crown." Then he started thinking some more, the Nishada chieftain. He said, "That's very noble of you. No father would want a better son. But maybe your own children will not agree. And it will cause civil war. So, I cannot agree." So, Devavrata said, "Fine. If that's the problem, then I shall be brahmachari for life and not have any children, to get in the way." That's why he took the vow. So then, this is a rare thing in those days. Oh, any day. I mean, but especially for, the Kshatriya. The Kshatriya is very passionate. They're allowed to have as many wives as they can maintain. You read even as close as 1600s, like Maharana Pratap. He was the king in Rajasthan. He had 54 wives. And Jai Singh, he had 46 wives. So these kings, that was not uncommon. And especially, back in those days. I mean, this is the Bharata dynasty. I mean, they're very... And Kshatriyas just aren't supposed to be... They're supposed to go into the Grahasta's ashram and take care of family. He could still serve the community, and even more so, actually, in a sense, because he wasn't attached to a family. He could make the whole society his family, but they're not expected to be on that level of consciousness. It's very unheard of. So when he took that vow, and back in those days, these days you can say, anybody can say they're going to do something, but back in those days, if someone made a vow, they upheld their word on the pain of death. So he was serious. So that was a very big step. And it is a very selfless act. So they changed his name to Bhishma, which means terrible vow. The root of the word is Bhaya, which means fear. So there's Abhaya, which means fearless. Bhaya is fear. Bhima means terrific, as in terrifying. And Bhishma, terrible vow. So that's how Bhishma got his name.